Uh, Welcome back to Bible and Blues, and if you're just watching this for the first time, this is a place where you can get your morning Bible reading in. You can read it with me. You can just watch it, listen to it as you're doing other stuff. That's great. And I've got this kind of combination vlog and read and Bible reading. And today we are doing Psalm 78. So hang out for a minute here. We're going to get started just a moment. Okay, so as I said, I am Cameron, your host here at Bible and Blues, and it is 6:12 a.m. and there's no place I'd rather be on a Monday morning than talking to you. And last night we were up a little bit late, so I had a tough time, a tough time getting out of bed this morning. But we were up a little late. We went to a movie. We watched the new Power Rangers movie finally, and I know everybody else has probably seen it already. But just so quick as we're waiting for see if we can get a couple more audience members. Who knows? Um, but we my thoughts on it is that I Power Rangers wasn't a thing when I was a kid. It was something that came about well after basically after I'd grown up. I'll be 47 years old next month. Wow. But it is something for a lot of millennials out there that and I have a good portion of my audience that's in the 24 to 35-year-old range that would have watched Power Rangers to a certain extent. Um, and so so you would have seen this show, and it was known for being kind of hokey and everything, and really simple and quickly put together. But it was for kids, so it was fine. And I think the movie, I think they definitely upped the special effects ante quite a bit. They made the story pretty decent, when they brought out the Zord vehicles, uh, uh, I thought that's when they kind of harkened back to their hokey time. So I mean, they were an integral part of the show, but I thought that really did have the feel for back in the day, because I did watch it a little bit. You have those opportunities where you're watching somebody else's kid, or you're in a house with a friends that had kids. But so that was that was kind of my take on the Power Rangers. I thought it was pretty well done. I thought the special effects, they definitely upped the ante for it, and compared to anything that they did with the creatures in costumes back in the day. So anyway, without further ado, Psalm 78 is a longer one, um, and so we're going to dive right into it here. It's a maskil of Asaph, and we've talked about who Asaph was in the past. He was considered a seer. Some liken that to level of prophecy. I don't think that's a. I think seer had more to do with wisdom or position than it had to do with prophecy. But Asaph was the head of the temple um, musicians, and um, so he was well known for that. So Psalm 78. O my people, hear my teaching. Listen to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter hidden things from old, what we have heard and known, for what our fathers have told us. We will not hide from their children. We will not hide them from their children. We will tell them, the next generation, the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonders he has done. He decreased statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our forefathers to teach their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. They would not be like their forefathers, stubborn and rebellious generation, whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to him. The men of Ephraim, although armed with bows, turned back on the day of battle. They did not keep the God. They did not keep God's covenant and refused to live by His law. They forgot what He had done, the wonders He had shown them. He did miracles in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt, in the region of Zoan. He divided the sea and led them through. He made the water stand firm like a wall. He guided them through, with the cloud by day and with the light from the fire all night. He split the rocks in the desert. He gave them water as abundant as the seas. He brought them streams out of a craggy rock and made water flow down like rivers. But they continued to sin against him, rebelling in the desert against the Most High. They willfully put God to the test by demanding the food they craved. They spoke against God, saying, "Can God spread a table in the desert?" When He struck the rock, water gushed out, and streams flowed abundantly. But can He also give us food? Can He supply meat for His people? When the Lord heard them, He was very angry. His fire broke out against Jacob, and His wrath rose against Israel, for they did not believe in God or trust in His deliverance. Yet he gave a command to the skies above and opened the doors of the heavens. He rained down manna for people to eat. He gave them the grain of heaven. Men ate the bread of angels. He sent them all the food they could eat. He let loose the east winds from the heavens, and led forth the south wind by His power. He rained meat down on them like dust, flying birds like sand on the seashore. He made them come down inside their camp, all around their tents. They ate till they had more than enough, for He had given them what they craved. But before they turned from the food they craved, even while it was still in their mouths, God's anger rose against them. He put to death the sturdiest among them, cutting down the young men of Israel. In spite of all this, they kept on sinning. In spite of His wonders, they did not believe. So He ended their days in futility and their years in terror. Whenever God slew them, they would seek Him. They eagerly turned to Him again. They remembered that God was their rock, that God Most High was their Redeemer. But when they would flatter Him with their mouths, lying to Him with their tongues, their hearts were not loyal to Him. They were not faithful to His covenants, yet He was merciful. He forgave their iniquities and did not destroy them. Time after time He restrained His anger and did not stir up His full wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a passing breeze that does not return. How often they rebelled against Him in the desert and grieved Him in the wasteland. Again and again they put God to the test. They vexed the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember His power, the day He redeemed them from the oppressor, the day He displayed His miraculous signs in Egypt, His wonders in the region of Zoan. He turned their rivers to blood. They could not drink from their streams. He sent swarms of flies that devoured them, and frogs that devastated them. He gave their crops to the grasshopper, their produce to the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamore figs with sleet. He gave over their cattle to the hail, their livestock to bolts of lightning. He unleashed against them His hot anger, His wrath, indignation, and hostility, a band of destroying angels. He prepared a path for His anger. He did not spare them from death, but gave them over to the plague. He struck down all the firstborn of Egypt, the firstfruits of manhood in the tents of Ham. But He brought His people out like a flock. He led them like sheep through the desert. He guided them safely, so they were unafraid. But the sea engulfed their enemies. Thus He brought them to the order of His holy land, to the hill country His right hand had taken. He drove out nations before them and allotted their lands to them as an inheritance. He settled the tribes of Israel in their homes. But they put God to the test and rebelled against the Most High. They did not keep His statutes. Like their fathers, they were disloyal and fatherless, as unreliable as a faulty bow. They angered Him with their high places. They aroused His jealousy with their idols. When God heard them, He was very angry. He rejected Israel completely. He abandoned their tabernacle of Shiloh and the tent that He had set up among men. He sent the ark of His might into captivity, His splendor into the hands of the enemy. He gave His people over to the sword. He was very angry with his inheritance. Fire consumed their young men, and their maidens had no wedding songs. Their priests were put to the sword, and their widows could not weep. Then the Lord awoke as from sleep, as a man wakes from the stupor of wine. He beat back his enemies. He put them into everlasting shame. Then he rejected the tents of Joseph and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim. But he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. He built a sanctuary like the heights, like the earth that is established forever. He chose David his servant and took him from the sheep pens. From tending the sheep he brought him to the shepherd of his people Jacob, of Israel his inheritance. And David shepherded him with integrity of heart, with skillful hands he led them. Here ends the reading of the Lord. Thanks be to God. There is a lot there. That was it talks about, you know, taking God's word and telling of his deeds and of his miracles to the next generation, to teach the next generation what's going on. Because if you don't, here's the things that has happened in the past. Here's what the way people reacted when they didn't have it, and they weren't taught properly, and even when everything was going right, even when God was they needed water, so God created struck the so Moses struck the rock with his staff and gave them all the water they needed. Then it's like, well, okay, he could do that, but can he give us meat and bread? So manna rained down from heaven every day, and they were able to take that and create the bread that the angels ate. And birds dropped all around so that they could have meat to eat, so they could have food to eat. This was this kind of the nature of us. The generation that learned so well the lessons of God have we don't impart our knowledge to the next generation, and when you don't do that, you don't have that continuation of it, and the next generation falls away. I don't so I see that to a certain extent, and then the next generation has to learn the lesson the hard way again. Um, our church, I don't know how your church has it. We have a really good youth program in our church that has youth missions and things like that. Money, of course, is always a factor, but uh, so but one of the things that our church does do does do a pretty good job with dealing with the youth and giving them the lessons that are needed to grow. And also, one of the things that we're doing now is we have a project called Gen to Gen, whereas our senior pastor is getting ready to retire. This is his last year, and he's actually the founding pastor of our church. And so he has one of the things that we're doing, and I'm not sure where exactly it came from, but as we're doing things to make the church, to modernize the church, to bring it up to and refresh it. We've changed out carpet and it's everything. We're going to be doing the parking lot and stuff like that, just so as he leaves, as the new pastor comes in, and we do have a new worship director. We have a lot of new people. We have a lot. We're a church in transition. As he leaves, the next generation that is coming up is going to have a fresh looking thing. It's going to have new. The bathrooms have been remodeled. The carpets have all been replaced. New paint jobs to modernize it. Some electronics, some TVs, things like that. There's some things that need to come back from the old, we think, to help keep it all drawn together. Sometimes people need more tactile visuals than slides going across a big screen TV. So, but other than that, I mean, obviously some tweaks, but we're doing that kind of thing for the next generation. I don't know what you're doing for your next generation. That's the kind of thing we're doing. So anyway, it's 6:25. So I'm going to call it here. You guys have a great day. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.